All right, this one's a bit different because this actually fits in with my certification to teach. I've had several comments on various social media about how the gasoline prices are not Biden's fault, and I don't understand supply and demand, and on and on and on. I hold a certification to teach secondary social sciences. Included in that department is economics. And part of economics is supply side economics, or supply and demand. First of all, for those who don't know, Russian oil accounted for 2% of our imported oil. A 2% decrease in the supply of oil to be refined into gasoline and diesel would not result in more than a doubling of price in some cases. Might result in a 5 to 10% at maximum, but that's not what we're seeing. We have $7 a gallon in California, and it's almost $4 a gallon here in Texas. That's more than double what we were paying in 2020. But supply and demand. If we look at the current supply of crude oil, it is predominantly OPEC, although there are other minor suppliers. Still some domestic, but very little. Biden himself promised he would put an end to fracking, offshore drilling, and drilling on public land, to name 3 specific examples. That accounts for a large drop in the supply of crude oil. The Keystone XL pipeline was to bring in 800,000 barrels a day. Now, before I continue on this, I'm going to make it very clear to anyone who wants to argue with me. These numbers are made up. I am not in any way claiming that these are the actual numbers. In fact, I can all but guarantee you they are not. Anyone who wants to start the "you just don't understand because you're using wrong numbers, that's not what the numbers are," will be blocked. Okay? These are made up numbers. This is how you teach economics. You come up with examples. And typically you do not use live numbers. But let's just look at the Keystone XL pipeline. Now, let's say, for sake of argument, that the number of refineries in the U.S. is 8. Let's say we are currently importing 400,000 barrels of oil per day from OPEC and another 40,000 barrels a day from other suppliers. That is a total of 55,000 barrels per day to each refinery. Now imagine if you could increase that by almost completely double to 155,000 barrels per day to each refinery. What would happen? Well, supply would almost completely double. Now let's also look at some other numbers. To get the oil from the Middle East to the United States involves pumping it out of the ground, loading it into trucks or rail cars to get to the coast, to then be put on boats and shipped overseas to the U.S., where it is then put back on rail cars or trucks to be taken to the refineries. All of that involves cost. That cost does not go down because we're importing more from Canada via the Keystone XL pipeline. What does go down is our cost, because we are now purchasing 800,000 barrels per day from Canada, and the cost for delivery is dramatically lower than the cost for delivery from OPEC. So let's just say that we go from 55,000 barrels per day from OPEC to 100,000 barrels a day from Canada. We just make a swap. We're not adding that 100,000 to what we were getting. Well, we're getting almost double, and we're probably getting it for at least the same price as OPEC, so almost half per barrel, or we're getting it for less per barrel than half, because the delivery method is far safer, more reliable, and costs less to operate than rail cars, trucks, and ships. Now, there will still be some shipping via rail cars or trucks, but far, far less, because you can run the Keystone Pipeline to strategic locations between Canada and Texas, and you're running over land far less than if you're having to pick it up in, say, North Carolina or Florida and go all the way across the country. Here, you're basically splitting the country in half, so you're cutting your overland cost in half for a lot of delivery. But let's just go with the reduction in cost because of the pipeline. Now, again, fake numbers. If OPEC was charging us $100 per barrel, and we're getting 55,000 barrels a day, that is a little over $5.5 million a day. Now, let's say that it costs half that, and we're doubling every single refinery's numbers. Well, if you double the numbers but it costs half, you're getting twice as much for the same cost. So you're now getting 100,000 barrels a day instead of 55,000 barrels a day at the same 5.5 million. That means that they're able to produce more gas for the same amount of money, more diesel for the same amount of money. When cost goes down, the price of what you're making can go down. It is truly that simple. To put it into a little more relatable terms, this is a widget, okay? It's actually a rubber grip for a pistol grip item, whatever that pistol grip item may be. And there are more pistol grip items than there are firearms. But let's say this is a widget. And because it is made out of rubber, you have the cost of getting the rubber and refining it into a form that can be used to make this widget. For sake of argument, the cost to produce the exact amount of rubber needed for this widget is $1. The cost per widget to run the machinery that pumps it into this form and gives it its nice texture is $1. So it costs $2 per widget to make. Now, companies are never going to just say, well, screw profit. We're going to sell everything at half what it costs us, and we're going to lose money. They're not going to do that. And for anyone watching this who thinks, well, maybe the government should run the company, the government's not going to do that. They're going to come in and they're going to say, we need to make as much money as we can because we're the government and we need it. So you're actually going to pay more under socialism than you would under capitalism. But we're looking at a capitalist society. This widget costs $2 to produce. Now, let's say they are charging $3 per widget. They're making a 50% profit. That is a fairly good profit to make, especially if this is a popular widget and they're selling 1 million of them a day. They're making $1 million a day, and they're spending $2 million a day. They're bringing in $3 million a day in revenue. $2 million of it is cost, $1 million of it pure profit. Now, let's say we find a new supply and a new way of getting the rubber and a new way of refining it. So now the rubber costs 25 cents for this amount. They're now spending $1.25 per widget. If their markup is still $1, they still want to make the same amount of profit, your cost still goes down. So you go from $3 a widget to $2.25 a widget. You're saving money, and they're still making the same amount of profit because the cost went down. Maybe it is because we found a new supply of rubber. Maybe it's because we found a better way of refining it. Maybe it's just because the cost of gasoline went down, so it costs far less to transport the raw rubber to the people making the widgets. However the cost goes down, they are spending less per product produced, and therefore, to make the same amount of profit, their markup is the same, $1 above cost. But because their cost goes down, their price goes down. That is a very simplistic way of looking at it, but it is how it works. If the cost of producing a gallon of gasoline or a gallon of diesel is $3, the companies producing it are going to sell it for $4.50 per gallon. Then you add government taxes. Now in California, that's 51 cents a gallon. You're not $5.01 a gallon. And the companies are making $1.50 per gallon profit. See where I'm going with this? It absolutely is due to the canceling of Keystone XL that gas prices went up, because refineries and so on and so forth were speculating on, as soon as that pipeline opens up, the oil is going to flow into this country. Far, far less expensive to get to us than it is now. And we're going to be able to make more profit, but sell at lower prices at the same time. People are going to love us. They're going to go on road trips. They're going to not worry about driving a truck over a small car. I can remember in the mid to late 90s, right after I started driving, gasoline was about 85 cents a gallon. And I remember when it hit $1 a gallon in the late 90s, I was livid. I'd give my left arm for $1.80 a gallon right now. But because of domestic policy enacted by the Biden administration, day one of his term in office, he canceled the Keystone XL pipeline. Now, yes, I know it was not complete, but it would have been completed before long. It probably would already have been pumping oil into this country for a little while now. But he canceled the project. That cost thousands of people their jobs. I don't understand how something so simple as, if it costs more to make it as a product, it's going to cost more to buy that product once it's produced, is so hard to understand. But in reality, I do understand it, because I have been a teacher at the middle and high school level, and I have seen the lesson plans for economics at the high school level. I've taught that class, and it is nowhere near as detailed as it should be. It's nowhere near as detailed as my economics class was. And my economics class, we went into the various schools of thought, supply side versus Keynesian economics, and so on. And trust me, I did study. I studied hard. For those who want to understand something about college, an 18-year-old fresh out of high school, when they start college, they don't have a GPA. You don't start with a 0. You start with a lack of a GPA. GPA calculation is grade points earned divided by credits attempted. You earn grade points, okay? An A is worth a 4.0. If it's a half credit course and you make an A in that course, you earned 2 grade points. If you attempted a half credit, 2 divided by 1/2 is 4.0. Now these are added up every semester. They add up all your grade points, grade times GPA value. They add up how many credits you attempted, and they then do grade points divided by credits attempted. In 1995, in the fall, I didn't want to go to college, but my parents wanted me to. And I wasted their money by registering, buying the books, going for 2 or 3 days, and then saying, screw it, I'm going to go back, I'm going to let them put me on the schedule, I'm going to work and make money. I never dropped the classes, and amazingly, I failed out of a semester. Academic probation, could not return for a full year. I didn't care, I didn't want to be there. But I had a true 0 GPA. I earned 0 grade points, but I had attempted 2 credits. So 0 divided by 2, 0. Now in 2005, I wanted to go back to college, but I didn't have a null GPA. I had a 0. I had to work harder and make better grades than the incoming 18-year-olds because they didn't have a GPA to start with. I had a 0 to start with. I still graduated with a 3.79. I worked my butt off. And it was before my junior year began that I knew I wanted to teach. So I worked my butt off even more in the history and social sciences classes because that's what I wanted to teach. So I know this stuff. And quite simply, yes, it is because of the Biden administration's domestic and foreign policy that our gasoline has risen in cost. Now, once again, for anyone who wants to argue, the numbers are made up. Those are not the numbers that it costs to import, that it costs to refine, that it costs to sell. Nothing. The only thing actually in there that I know is true, or at least is true as of today, 31 March 2022, is the 51 cent per gallon tax in California. I know this because I just saw a report that a Republican state legislator out in California presented a bill that would have wiped out, completely removed the state gas tax for 6 months. For 6 months, Californians would have paid 51 cents a gallon less, but it was defeated. Rather than that, Newsom's proposal is sending a $400 prepaid debit card to everyone. That's what's going out. I can guarantee you, I will spend far more than $400 in gas in 6 months if I'm driving to and from work and everything else. I'm blessed that I work from home, and I might drive an average of 20 miles a week. But even at that, I'd be spending a lot of money in gas. And that 51 cents less per gallon, that would have been an amazing thing. Because that means only 200 gallons, only 10 tanks, and I would have saved more. It blows my mind. But then again, we know that our current globalist agenda following, swamp-loving rhinos and Democrats don't really care about us. They know that for the last 20 or more years, public education has failed our students. I can't find work teaching because I would not also be a coach and thus a part-time or half-time teacher. And yet we still have people who ask, why don't our students understand the way our country works? Why don't they know their history? Why don't they understand economics? When all you have to do is accept the fact that their teachers are kept so busy coaching that they're doing the absolute bare minimum in the classroom. We need to retake our public education, and the only way we're going to do it is to cripple it for a short time. Students should be homeschooled or put in private school. And if enough people did that in every jurisdiction in this country, public schools would begin crying out, wondering why there are no students. If there's no students, they don't get grants. They don't get grants, they can't do everything they want. There's no students, they're not selling tickets to football games. They're not selling t-shirts and cups and koozies and pens and pencils. And they lose money. And like anything that is run like a business, as sadly schools are today, when they start losing money, then you get their attention. Thank you for everyone who made it this far. I know this has been a bit longer, but it is a topic that is near and dear to my heart because it is a topic that is of grave importance today. Please make sure you are subscribed. I'm going to be posting more back on the YouTube channel within the next probably month or so. I'm looking to start up a podcast, and I will be posting the video here and the audio via the podcast. Make sure that you have the notification bell on so that until I'm back on a schedule, and even at that point, you get notified of everything that I post. Until next time, have a blessed day.